Hello, guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. This is another one of those episodes where, like the Black Sabbath Tony Martin era, I'm going to another Tony. All Tonys are hard rockers, you know what I mean? To chat about the end of the Tony Doolin or Demolition Man era of Venom, before he went on to join and create Venom Inc. Like a lot of these bands that change singers for short periods of time in the life of the history of the band, um, they often produce quite a sort of fast and furious output. And then as they sort of move towards leaving the band or the band changing, you often find that the last album that they put out often gets completely forgotten or overlooked, or it's just because they're trying to get out of the contract or they want to move on. Um, Same with Black Sabbath's Tony Martin's Forbidden. This one here is going to be the Wastelands, the 1992 final Tony Demolition Man Doolin album that came out with the Venom lineup, with Tony himself on bass and vocals, Abaddon or Anthony Bray on drums, and Jeff Dunn or Mantis on guitars. So one of those really sort of amazing lineups that I got to see when Abaddon left Venom, joined Venom Inc. And I played live here in Canada. It was a one of those life affirming moments for me, because I genuinely believe this is one of my favorite bands in all the world. I love Maiden, absolutely do, but there's something about Venom that just seems to sonically play in that sweet spot for me. So this is the 92 album. It's their 8th studio album. It's the very last of the original lineup of this lineup after Temple of Ice, the previous album. Was going to be produced by Child's Play's ex-Child's Play producer Howard Benson, but he wasn't available again, so Kevin Ridley jumped in, and I'm not sure whether that's a bad thing or a good thing, because this is, I don't know about Child's Play that much. Its working title originally was Kissing the Beast, which is a track on the album. And then when they got the artwork back by Tari Joseph, and I'm going to butcher this, Aurora Iatus, that's I think it's his pseudonym. It changed their idea of the name of the album, because I don't know. There's nothing on the internet that says why it's called the Wastelands, because it could be based on the T.S. Eliot epic poem that Maiden, that Steve Harris so often quotes on his epic tracks. It could be, I don't know. I'd like to think it is, because the subject matter on the album, it sort of goes all over the place, but there's no real thematic, apart from maybe towards the end of the album. There's no real thematic concept or construct behind it. It is 41 minutes long, so it doesn't hang around. So I really like. The track listing is Cursed, I'm Paralyzed, Black Legions, Riddle of Steel, Need to Kill, Kissing the Beast, Crucified, Shadow King, Wolverine, and Clarice. I just ordered a reissue of it on coloured vinyl. I think it's winging its way from Germany as we speak. I have it on cassette, but I don't have it on vinyl, so it's really nice to get a reissue of it, because it's good to give the lads some money back, because it's a brilliant album. Again, it's one of those. It's very odd, isn't it, how we can love a band, but there are albums that sort of just drop off our listening, and then because they drop off, they get harder and harder to get to find. I mean, they weren't on Spotify for years. I mean, it's only recently, since the reissues, that you can listen to them on, on like Primeval, for instance, which I've talked about before, which is possibly my favourite Tony Doolin Venom album. This, though, comes very close second, which is interesting, because people will often say that they like Temple of Ice better. This one, because it came in that period of time, 1992, that time when sort of I don't know, when metal was in a sort of its hinterland, its desert land, its desert time. There was not a lot of good music coming out, and if it was coming out, it was really, they're trying to get this sort of new way, this new metal, this sort of metal core, this, and there was a sort of lot of um, trying to drag in different genres to the scene to keep it alive and spark it around. And there was some really poor production, really, really poor production, some very low key promotion, and record labels were um, doing their best to ignore. Excuse me if you hear there's a trimming, someone's trimming a tree in my neighbour's garden. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it. Probably not. I've got the mic directed at me, but if it does annoy you, there's a buzzing in the background every now and again. I do apologise. Yeah, so there was a sort of that time when music just, I don't know, it just felt. I mean, today it feels like music is the forgotten medium. That it's just it's been sort of whitewashed and AI'd and sort of bleached. It doesn't mean what it used to people. It does to us listening to these podcasts. The reason why we do these podcasts, and why the reason you've seeked out this podcast or podcasts of a similar ilk, is because you want to listen to people talk about things that you find passionate about. But unfortunately, um, most of the scene these days is, it's that kind of. And it's always been since the birth of digital music. I really truly believe that is one of the reasons why, even though we now live 24/7 with our streaming services plugged into our heads, most of us anyway. It's that doesn't take away your passion for the music. That's just another way of accessing it. But there are, unfortunately, I think, great swathes of the music loving world who are not even music lovers anymore. I don't know if there are many of those are around, being still coming. I think it's the new generations. It's just something that's there. We take it for granted. Well, we didn't take it for granted, and it was part of our cultural heritage. And I think that's one of the reasons that I really love heavy metal, and I like hard rock and punk and the alternate scene of music, because it generally is a cultural thing. Whereas I think pop music and rap, and now I could be wrong when it comes to this, but this is how I perceive it. It feels I don't know, just dissolvable and forgettable. And with pop music back in the 80s and 90s, late 70s and 80s, it was really constructed really, really well. Like the Tears for Fears album. Their album is unbelievably structured. It is like, if you actually listen to the album, you might be a metalhead and don't. I'm not listening to Tears for Fears, and that is perfectly fine. But if you love music, you'll listen to that and go, "Wow!" Like Peter Gabriel's solo albums. Um, there's pop music as such, really genuinely. Sledgehammer, and they're pop songs, right? And they're so amazingly structured and put together. And that's what I find with these albums, these sort of hinterland albums of bands like Black Sabbath and Venom, and to some extent Iron Maiden. Deep Purple went through that phase. Black Sabbath, as I said before, went through that phase. There's a lot of them that did. Marillion, for me, have gone through that phase, where there's lots of passion, and it's like a relationship, isn't it? It's lots of passion at the beginning for what you're doing, and then you just sort of, it peters out and become comfortable. And I think that's what's happened with people with this album. I wrote in big letters in my book, very grown up album, okay, for Venom, because a lot of the problems with these bands like Venom and like Black Sabbath and like Iron Maiden is the hardcore fan base. A hardcore fan base come along, and all they want to hear is Teacher's Pet, and all they want to hear is Countess Bathory and black metal, Welcome to Hell. They don't want to hear a band that's musically grown up. I mean, Tony Doolan brought his love for Black Sabbath to the fore in this band in quite a large way, and and Jeff Dunn with his big Kiss love of Kiss, he sort of comes through on this album, as I'll talk about later on. And Abaddon's drumming is really much more matured if you listen to his clattering on the first couple of albums, and then listen to how he is on this one, and then how he played on Venom Inc.'s first album, Ave, you really can hear a more mature and more grown-up sound. Production-wise, particularly, I think when Tony came along, he brought a much more musicality. Now, I love Kronos. I love his madness that he takes to everything he plays, but there's something. There's a more musicality and more directness when Tony's stuff's in the band, and that's only just proven directly by things like Primeval, which is an absolute corker of an album, and this one here. I mean, I will do Temple of Ice one day, but this is the one that I really wanted to talk to, because it's one of those ones that, until it was reissued, a lot of people who, unless you're in the know, would not know about this album. And it's really sad if you think about how many out there, how many albums are forgotten, and there are gems on them. This is an album by no means is 11 out of 11 on the Millsy meter. It's no by no means Venom's best album of ever. But there are some absolute cracking gems on this album, and it, for 41 minutes, it just speeds through. It doesn't take most of your day up, and you can just enjoy. You can just enjoy yourself with it, and then get on. Maybe put on another album afterwards, and feel that you can get a couple under your belt. The writing credits on this album are spread amongst the band themselves: Jeff, Anthony, Tony, and that comes across on this album as well. It doesn't feel like it's a one direction. It feels like it's an actual genuine band, a conglomerate. It feels like a proper sort of. I'm searching for the word. Proper, concise and connected sound. I think it doesn't feel like one band member's gone, I've got this idea, and you can hear in the background that the others don't really care for it, but it's on the album because they really need to flesh it out. Anyway, if you are going to listen to Venom's back catalogue, there are three distinct Venom eras. You have the original lineup, you have the Tony Doolin lineup, and then you have the Reformation afterwards back, but not with Abaddon or with Mantis, which basically is Kronos' band. And to be fair, they make a good clattery sound, and it just sounds like they're trying to hold on to the original Venom sound, which, to be honest, is not going to be easy, because you do need to grow up and you do need to mature slightly, even though, we know bands like, bands like Kiss have never changed really, and bands like the Misfits and things like that, they knock out the same old sound, but you know that and you go there for that, but there's always a little bit of difference somewhere. Whereas this, I think with the Venom post Doolin era, I don't know, it doesn't quite hit the mark for me. Still great, I enjoy it, and I'd see them live if they came to Australia, but there was that sort of clattery punk, black metal, speed metal, thrash and madness really had its time, and it's time to move on. And I think that's what Tony does with this format of the band. Anyway, that's enough for me on this side. I'm going to get some more of my tea, and then we'll talk about track by track on the next side of the show. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now, guys.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to part two, guys, where we're going to go through track for track by the eighth studio album by the second phase of the Venom life, with the first time with Tony Doolan, Abaddon and Jeff and Mantis from the original lineup. The album is the Wastelands, if you hadn't listened to the first part of the show and if you skipped through. And the first track we come through to is a song called Cursed. Now this is really doomy. So this is an album, a track that completely sort of, you can tell that Tony Doolan's got his fingers on this because he loves his Black Sabbath, and it has a real sort of Sabbathy, doomy kind of chanty intro. It's sort of like, it's got like a very solemn, very dark and foreboding opening for the first few minute or so, and then it starts to jump in with a gallop and screams and becomes this. It's like anything, like nothing they've ever done before. Really, truly different. It's the way that Tony. One of the reasons I also love Tony's vocals is the way that he can wrap his lips around words and the way he spits them out lyrically. He's the way he sort of can roll his R's. You know, like Kenneth Williams could do it with an amazing. He used to do it amazingly, but Tony does it with this. The way that he enunciates, it's. He gets speed in his vocals without being inaudible sometimes, like Bruce does every now and again. It just really, he's everything that he enunciates is really considered. Right, he's probably one of the best metal vocalists around at the moment, that isn't as famous as he could be and should be. Now this song is about the afterlife of the pharaoh and Tutankhamun, basically, and the curse of the pharaohs. It has a really, the way that Maiden did the same thing with Power Slave. They've got that really sort of pharaoh-esque Arabic kind of sound to the music. They do that with this one. It's got an absolutely beautiful atmosphere to it, and you know, again, lyrically. It's not it's quite a wordy song. I think it's the longest song on the album. And let's just check that, make that sure that I've got that correct. Let's have a look. Okay. Yeah, I mean it's 7 minutes 35, so it's quite long, right? Again, you got most of that's intro and outro, and then a really nice middle piece. Like they do a lot on this album. They do give the instruments some time to breathe, and let you really enjoy the movement of the sound, which is fantastic. It's really, I mean, it's just got a good way with words. From the golden seat of Ramesses to the ending of the sacred Nile, the pharaohs of the ancient land, the deserts across countless miles. Inside the labyrinth, where buried is the king, his waiting maids of countless gifts lie within. Mummified and tombed, the ancient scroll left to rot, brain, heart, and soul, as they walk through the passage of endless night, using sparsely the candles as their only light. I love. It's very. I mean, you know, for a band that's known for its sort of very satanic lyric, which do appear later on. It's actually, he's very wordy. You know, like I really hate this image of heavy metal singers and lyricists being all stupid. You know, like the Spinal Taps and the Bad News of this world, because most of the time they're really intelligent and write really intelligently clever lyrics, and that's quite. It's a beautiful song. It is very doomy, and it's right in my wheelhouse. And what a way to start an album, right? 7 minutes of that is absolutely fantastic. You know, possibly one of my favorite songs on the album. Difficult to say because I like a lot of them, but it starts out with an absolute cracker, right? Same way that Primeval starts out with a sort of, you know, that sort of atmospheric piece of music with a phone line, and I think it's just really smart. And then we move into I'm Paralyzed, following on with the sort of the themes of this of the previous song. It feels like a typical Tony Doolan track, right? When I said it's very dark indeed, its lyrical content is very succinct. To me, it's about someone trapped in a useless body and a brain, and um, he can't get out. He's trapped in it, or he's trapped in a relationship that's paralyzing him. It's very, very, very dark. It's also about the art of dying. Blessed Relief and the Art of Dying, I've written. Um, it's yeah. It again. Tony's bass on this is subtle but brilliant. Abaddon's drumming on here really just is mature and adult and cuts through that real sort of heavy sound. Um, I don't know. It's a very hard song to say. It's you could play it to a friend and go, "Hey, listen to this." It is a deep song. You could probably put it on and let it go by, but I'll read you the lyric of it. Okay, here we go. Searching through regions of light here in my dark thoughts, I call for you to come. Paralyzed and fixed to the wall, awaiting the judgment, awaiting you to call out. I'm paralyzed, calling out, I'm paralyzed. There's no reason for me. Have gone only the clothing protecting me from. So what it's basically saying is he feels naked. So he's naked and struck and tight and paralyzed. Calling out, I'm paralyzed. Now caught from pins in her hair. Now caught from pins in her hair, biting and bending to sharpen up the point, slipping into the lock, freeing myself to penetrate and cause death. Now, does that mean that he's taking his own life, but by this pin that this person's sharpened up? Is it them setting themselves free? And then killing themselves. It's again, I know it's just a dark subject matter, but this music tends to be that way. It's a very strange song. Every time I listen to it, and I've listened to it very many times, I do come across different things. Sometimes it's about someone's trapped in their own mental health. Sometimes it's trapped in physical health. Sometimes I think it's a suicide. Suicide song. But it is a very typical Tony Doolin track. When I say that, the sound of it, the way he enunciates the short lyric, it's not a long song. It doesn't hang around, and it's thunderous. And I think that sort of subject matter you don't want to linger on. You want to sort of move past it, get out of your system. One day, when I interview Tony again, I'm going to ask him, because I've got an interview lined up with him sometime, hopefully by the end of the year or early next. We talk about it. We're just going to find time. And then we get the next track here of Black Legions. Okay. Now, Jeff's guitar is crunchy, heavy, and old school. It's very modern it's a very modern sound for 1992, but it's also a very old sound for the band. Abaddon's drums at the best on the album here. He really knows how to draw the emphasis of the bass and the drums together. They really sit tightly. It's got a very clanky, I've written here in big red letters, clanky punk-like bass parts, cavernous sounding production. They mention Belial in the lyric for the first time on the album, which is an Old Testament name for the devil. That's not, I mean, they use Belial a lot in their lyrics to Venom. It could easily be on one of the first Venom albums. If you toned down the production and made it a little bit DIY-ish, you could easily be on one of the first Venom albums. This is the screaming, tormented sounds underneath the bass solo in this is something I really have always drawn myself to Venom for that reason. It's like that hammer horror, Italian exploitation zombie movie sounds. That lo-fi, but with so much passion and want to do something. It's not like they just turned up to be heroes. It's a real passion into it, and I find that a lot with this particular. It's very black. Tony's bass tone takes control of this instrumental parts, and the vocal delivery in here is really strong and really dark, and I love it to bits. Here, I mean, it is basically about the story of Hades. Here, high on the ridge where the Dark Lord stands, sending black legions to crush the lands. captures of Hades, transporting the crown into the pit of this unholy row. Do it all alone, down into Belial's home, live then die, Satan calls his devil child. His evil child, strengthens his force as the darkness falls, laughs at the angels where their feeble calls. High on the fortress that crumbles before all that in touch with the dark evil law. Do it all alone, down into Belial's home, strike the final chord, hail unto the overlord. It's very Venomy, right? It's very Venomy. It's almost like a parody of itself, but not, because a parody of itself would be a little bit more obvious. This is yeah, it's black. It's something that I say could quite easily sit on the early albums. Something that gets lost sometimes in the mid-album period of Venom. That sort of satanic direction. It's almost like a Venom album has to have a satanic S song on it, and so it should. That's their image, right? But this one is my favourite for that kind of thing on the album. And then we move into Riddle of Steel. This is a great sing-along, chorusy style song. It's very much a throwback to the good old Nwabum sound, right? Mantis guitars and setup is mixed so into that sort of distance. It's almost like Mantis has put his guitars in one room, and he's mic'd and he's amps in another and a mic in another, and it's sort of like he's micing it from a distance away. You know that type of sound you get with classic Nwabum albums where it is sort of mic'd. You know, they're using probably a ribbon mic, Senha, like MX 311. Am I thinking the mic types? Anyway, they're using these different mics, and they're usually, you know, they used to put them up in front of their Marshall amps or whatever amp they're using, and then record from that. That's what you normally do, and you have one from the back to get the back sound. But I think it sounds like they almost mic'd in a different room. It's cavernous, and I really like that for that feel and that sound. And it's one of those sounds that I will always go back to Nwabum for, even though Venom in interviews have clearly stated that they are not new wave of British heavy metal. In fact, they even don't consider themselves heavy metal some of the times, like Sabbath. They felt more like a punk, like an offshoot to it, a whole different subgenre, and they did invent that subgenre, as I've mentioned before on the show. So it's a lovely difference on the album. It has that change of feel, change of sound, and lyrically, this one is more. I find this one. Okay, it talks about, now what have I got here? It's based on the lyric. Was based on a character called Thulsa, a Robert E. Howard's character. He of Conan the Barbarian. Now, he does appear in the film Conan the Barbarian. He's played by James Earl Jones. Completely different, as you would imagine, to what the actual character should look like. The character is a skull face and a disformed body, but James Earl Jones plays him as a normal person. He first appears in the Deckard Cat. I think I've written that right. It's written 1929. Originally, that character was first envisaged. It's a deep cut for me because he's also in Doom in Cull of Atlantis, which is what the very time he appears in his own story. And I've written here again. I like to do this because it makes me think of it fun, because it's like a lot of this metal stuff. I like it when it's based on literature. Stuff, particularly stuff I wouldn't know. I don't know much about this particular character. I don't know much about Conan the Barbarian or even any of the Robert E. Howard books or comic strips. I just don't know. And so it's nice to go and have another look back at it. And the lyric says at the start, he goes, hooded in the mists of time in distant lands of dust. Here they live and forge a steel that carves out human lust. Thulsa doom, his flesh and bone control all that is fake. Lifting head and staring eyes that guide sinful snakes. Love it, absolutely love it. Where all our lives begin and riddle of steel, armies of followers who are guided by his throne. blindly walk to Tulsa steps and foot that black wings, the foot that black kings home. Ah, I love it. And again, great guitar solo. Jeff's guitar work is, as always, brilliant. There's not really a moment that he ever goes flat. He's diddled and daddled with some strange guitar stuff in the past, but it also always seems to sort of catch you in the end. It always seems to be fitting the artwork. The Abaddon's drum is brilliant. And again, Tony's bass, you have to sometimes stop and listen to see if you can hear his work, because he's so good that it's the kind of bass where you don't notice it. I know that in me is a good bass line. Sometimes you have to listen to it to hear it, and it's there. That doesn't mean it's poor or bad. It just means it's mixed and it works well with the drums, right? Sorry, I have some tea. Yeah, but lyrically, again, fun and interesting lyric, right? Then we go on to Need to Kill. I've written here that it is a futuristic, funky, funk-driven drum heavy Abaddon shines brightly through here on the drum kit. Now, when I saw Abaddon play, he was pissed off his head, and as he always is. I mean, he finished the gig and he poured a bottle of Jack Daniels over us. It was hilarious. But he plays with a very small kit. He's not he's not a Nico McBrain or a Neil Peart kind of drummer. He's a quite tight, small kit drummer, and what he gets out of that is a real hardcore punk sound. Again, very much like the earlier track, it's almost extreme metal. To me, this sounds, and the way that Tony punctuates it, because he is an ex-punk, his tone, they all are. And I find that the sound that comes from it reminds me of Extreme Noise Terror, GBH, Exploited, Crass even, has a real crassy feel, the way that it sort of spat at the mic. For me, it's about the future of computers, but everything that it's really quite forward-thinking, sort of AI, where AI is going now. It has an industrial feel. Jeff's guitar changes speed a turn of a coin here. It's thunderous. You can hear the hammering of the machines and the buzz of the lasers. In about the 4-minute mark, it becomes cinematic and it's very beautiful. In fact, its composition and structure is just something of beauty, really. Now, lyrically, let me just get the lyric up. Lyrically, okay, beyond 2000 in the future, where wars at times limits our mind. Say again, this is written in 1992, so you're thinking of the future, right? Central computers that control and know the simple weakness of mankind. Humanoids living in a structure, we're walking in a lifeless path. Motor with a need to kill, searching through the wreckage of molten steel and glass, seeing in all the infrared and heavy in its mass. Terminate, exterminate the son of... Connor Reese, you must prevent the bastard ever becoming born. So that. It's funny how that's basically Terminator. But I really... Now, I've said this before. I love reading lyrics, but sometimes you get in so into the music that you read the lyric and you miss bits, like the Connor Reese bit, of course. I've missed that completely. It is Terminator based, right? But that's still AI, isn't it? That's still futuristic. That's still industrial. It does have that feel to it. Now, I was looking at, is it not? I did actually write that down, didn't I? Did I write that down? I bloody did as well. Because the film came out in 1992. I wrote that in the lyric. The film came out in 1991, or around that time. This is Terminator 2. Not the first album, a song of this album that will be movie related, but one of the first one of the album. Yeah, Terminator. There you go. What is it? Might not be, but I think it is. Beyond the 2000s, in the future wars beyond the limits of our mind, central computer that controls and knows the simple weakness of mankind. And still the armies of robotic men crushing the humans in their path, lifeless of pain and void of sorrow, create a crimson aftermath. Yeah, beautiful lyric that. Yeah. So it's Terminator 2 or Terminator, isn't it? There you go. So it's funny how when you sit down to do these things and read the lyric again back to yourself, they just happen to pop up. Now, it's not because I didn't do my research, because I do. I just, sometimes you just get into the music and miss the lyric. All right. Anyway, so we both learned on the show. It's good to hear. Uh, the next song is Kissing the Beast, which I said before was going to be the title of the album. It's interesting here because I've written thrash, 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 and thrash. We all know that Venom were sort of the forerunners of the thrash movement that started that sound at Metallica and the big four. And if you don't know what the big four is, Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, and Megadeth. We know they're the famous thrash bands, right? Okay, but there's something about the Venom thrash sound which is a little bit more dirty. It's not so as speedily clean as some of that thrash can be. It's definitely, you can hear the sound that has inspired those other bands, but in this, for me, it surpasses those other bands. Venom have always surpassed those other bands for me. This is the heaviest track on the album, I think. It really makes your head bang, right? It's pretty thrashy for 1992, considering around that time, I think, we had just had the Black Album not soon before then. It's quite a demonic lyric. It's quite a Venom lyric in my part, and the way that Tony sings in this, it really wields that Venom sound. Even mentions the 9-bladed sword, not 5, not 8, not 6, but 9-bladed sword. If any of you have ever seen Monty Python's Life of Brian, the bit where Brian is waiting outside on the balcony as his Matthias' house is being searched by the Legion, and then he falls through onto there's several soothsayers out there, and one of them is Terry Gilliam, all painted in red, talking about the 9-bladed sided bladed sword and the whore of Babylon, and then you've got that, and then he falls on Michael Palin's character that's talking about the raffia work baskets that he put there just the night before. I love Python. And when I heard that lyric, I know I couldn't help giggle, but I did, because clearly, I Googled it, and it is a real thing. It is a biblical thing, but Old Testament thing, but it did make me laugh because I thought of Python. It's pre-Christian feel to this. It has a real feel, deep Christian feel. As I said, real. They do seem to be able to connect with a pagan, a pre-Christian beliefs. A lot of this on this track, they really get the feel. You get the feel of the Hittites and the Zoroastrians and those, very, very, very early Persian sects of religion that predate Christianity by millennia, even predating the Muslim faith, and I find that part of history very fascinating. I do a lot of listening to podcasts about that, and I read a lot of books about that, and I find that I met a Zoroastrian once, which was interesting because it's a very interesting faith that sort of predates Judaism, and is a sect of pre-Christian, pre-Judaist religion, and it's the god of fire, basically, and you can't be born, you can't convert into it, and you have to, only males, the male has to be a Zoroastrian for their children to be so, and you can't convert into it. So if a family has 2 daughters, well, in theory, unless they marry a Zoroastrian, the faith will die there. It's a very, very interesting pre-Christian, and I'd highly recommend having a look into it. But anyway, that song feels me full of that satanic feel that Venom does give you. And Satanism is always about devil worship and baby slaughtering and goat blood drinking and virgins being sacrificed at midnight. That's not necessarily the case. That's devil worship. So Satanism is actually quite a positive life affirming religion. It just lives on the counterbalance to Christianity. Anyway, it really drives the point home very well. It's very doomy in some parts. It changes from doom to thrash and thrash back to doom. It has a real Sabbath sounding ending, and it has a real Sabbath sounding riffage. The last like 30 seconds riff, and I just want that riff over the entire album. I don't know what Jeff was thinking, just putting up the end, but it's really sexy. It's a really sexy riff. It's one of those things I would go on, Jeff, can I have that through the entire album, please? He sort of tantalizes you with this really fantastic ending at the back end of that song. And speaking of similar songs, we now move into Crucified. Okay, let me hang on. Before I do that, let me give you a bit of lyric from Kissing the Beast. It was Kissing the Beast I was talking about, wasn't it? Yeah. And let's have a quick lyrical look at Kissing the Beast. Bear with me. Okay. Fixtures immensely beholding the force unholy, benevolence, deadly remorse, tearing the lining and saving the flow, dropping the hydrate, closing the soul. I mean, I don't understand what that means, but it sounds fantastic. But where I was talking about the nine-sided soul, where am I here? Okay, if I can find it. Sorry. Here we go. The nine-bladed sword, as the whore can recall, dissecting the innocents under the fall, cracking the surface of the air, in still fresh only below us. The mad stench of death, a prince or a pauper or a lunatic king, son of a daughter shrouded in sin. I love it. I mean, I never really get these lyrics when I read them out very well. I'm sure you go, oh my God, he's stuttering through those. It's hard to do it with that music, but you understand the wordsmithery of this band, and particularly whoever wrote the lyrics for this song. I think it would be Tony. Sounds like a Tony song. It's just brilliant. The nine-sided, and then talking about the nine-sided whore of Babylon. Brilliant. And then we move on to Crucified. That basically says everything that you can imagine what it says. It's quite controversial. It's quite short. It's one that has very oddly connected concept to the previous song I wrote. It's contradictory. It's got Jeff's most cultured radio-friendly solo on it, and I don't know why I wrote that. Where that came from when I was writing that down, I don't know. This lyrically is quite apart from the rest of the album, because it's about the crucifixion of Christ, but from the point of view, it's sort of looking at the point of view, a different point of view to Christ himself, which is we often get it from the point of view of Christ, right? It looks looking to the future and to what damage has done to what religion has done to the future of the world. So what would have happened without the crucifixion of Christ? I listened to a really good thing about that recently, about how the cross is incorrect, that he would have been, if he was crucified, he would have been crucified on an X, not on a T, because they couldn't have held their bodies up long enough, and it would have been too quick a crucifixion. It's quite interesting. Anyway, the lyric is, all I see lies designed to suffocate and choke, sacrifice hallowed by thy name. The mighty have fallen, condemned are the priests, all you feel terror wrapped in pain. As you hang forsaken in your hour of need, as we watch you die crucified, God of war, fight the good, fight hypocrite. It says suffocate truth revealed as shame. Because that's another thing that people don't remember, is they think that crucifixion is death by like starvation or blood loss through the hammering of nails into the hands and feet, but it's not. It's actually suffocation, because as you can't hold your body up, there's pressure on your lungs, crushes your rib cage, and you suffocate slowly. It's from, again, very dark, sorry, but it is from the point of view of those watching him be crucified, not from his point of view. And I do think it's about what happens after. But here we go. Roll the dice and recapture and rapture never came, as you hang forsaken in your hour of need, as we want you die crucified. So it's basically saying that you weren't the son of God, and you made that you made your bed and lie in it, and we watched you die, which is very dark. Again, it's not anti-Christian by any means. I think it's more realism for those that don't that are agnostic or non-believers of any kind of religion. Um, yeah, it really is quite a demanding song. Quite yeah, dark. I'm glad it stuffed that part of the album. If it opened up the album with that, it might be too dark. But um, you go to a Venom album, you don't go to a Venom album to listen about tea time picnics um, and lovey-dovey. You go for this sort of darkness, and this could quite easily be on the first few albums as well. Again, I think this is quite a radio-friendly sounding track with a very dark and um, sort of deep lyric underneath it. So one of my favourite tracks on the album, also one of my hardest ones to actually get your head around. And then again, we move to Shadow King. This is a real galloping Novum sound, right, with great swaves of Kiss in sound mixed in. You can tell that with Jeff being a big fan. It follows on from Crucifixion again as well. It sort of follows on there a bit. This one's about the blight of the New World exploration. This is about the destruction of First Nations people, like Cortez taking and destroying the Inca for gold, and giving them the flu and the cold, killing them with disease. Like Columbus and Magellan. Columbus is mentioned in this song about taking Christianity around the world to the native people that didn't need it. I've always thought that, to be fair, that we've done it, haven't we? We really seem to do it quite well as a species. There we are. There's these ancient civilizations very merrily going on in their own kind of non-religious way, living their lives with the movement of the sun and the movement of the seasons, and using their own forms of superstition to control their own moralistic backgrounds. They weren't all, this is the thing about morals for me, and that's what this song really provokes in me, is that morality is a construct. Yeah, if you it's like poverty is a construct. If you take go into the jungle and you find this tribe that have spent 40,000 years living the same way, with no guilt, no sin, no body worried about no guilt about their bodies and hiding themselves, and and then you give them that. It doesn't destroy them? Doesn't it take away? Doesn't it do the opposite to what you want it to do? Because they don't need your God; they have their own, and it works well for them. And that's what this song really does for me. It really brings that cruelty to it. I mean, even Cortez's king, even the Spanish king, was quite specifically said, "Do not go out and do not change. Just interact and see if you can come back with something, but do not change them." And he did. He went out there and he changed them. And I think this is something that is brilliant about this particular band and metal in general. Is it teaches you something. It gives you a bit of awareness. If you don't know the story of Hernan Cortez, I'd highly recommend you having a listen. Very nasty piece of work, to be fair. And of course Columbus and Magellan and all the explorers that were going out there to find the world. And the Brits are the same. I mean, I'm not just saying those that, we as a nation did exactly the same thing to India and to Africa and to the Americas. We did. And you look on one hand, you can say it's the unstoppable path of modernity and future, but it's not really. There is, if we did it now, we would do it a different way, would we not? We would observe and we would walk away from it. Then we just took, and butchered, and this is what happens. It is a brilliant piece of music. Um, it's, as I said, it's very Nwabum sounding for me. Um, I'll give you the lyric. Hang on. Sorry, where I get my lyrics from, I use my phone, and it's decided not to let me use my face recognition. Bloody phone. The world we live in is silent, lucid liquid change. The king appears, real afraid, aware of his rage. Seeks to tell in unseen terror and pour life and lust. The rising of Baphomet is all that we can trust. So, rising of the devil, basically, bringing the devil to um, the world. Hell on earth, sadistic birth, hell on earth. God bless all who sail in her, the ship he built with fright. Pleasant in his infamy, he sails into the night. See, and he talks about redesign Columbus Isle where only kings will roam. I mean, again, you could probably read that lyric differently, okay? Columbus Isle, it could be America. I see it that way. I see the lyric, it's about that, okay? He found the place where gods reside, destroyed into the ancient dust. Hell on earth, sadistic birth, hell on earth. I mean, that's what I read into it, okay? God bless who will sail her, the ship he built with fright. Pleasant in his infamy, it sails into the night. I just think it's about sailing into the future and just into the void and destroying um, innocence. But anyway, it's still a brilliant, cracking song, even though it's quite heavy lyric. And then we come into Wolverine. All right, we're coming to almost to the end of the album. This is old school Venom again. It's a cracking old school Venom sound. It's got a mix of punk and heavy metal. It's a magical mixture that Venom seem to do so well. It's what they do really. It's what they're the best at, in my opinion. It's full of chaos, organized chaos. Tony and Abaddon and Jeff, they just make this noise. It's really just clattering chaos. It's about the Nordic sacrifice, Celtic gods and their magic, intensity of the track, punctuated with Jeff's thrashy chaos. Tony spits a lyric out with absolute venom in this particular track. Really, at one of his lyrical vocal bests. Deep in the dark of the forest comes calls of sounds of the Wolverine as they dance their wicked dance around the fire in a dead trance, raising the chalice to the night directly seek their own delight, sacrifice the only son, saving blood, sip it in one by one, cleansing the altar, awaiting the prize, the virgin clad whiter than snow. Yeah, so for me it's about again pre-Christian sacrifice, and in the snowy tundral waste, and it has that kind of snowy sound, that clattery, cold, fast and heavy sound, and it's a brilliant track. Again, the only one on this that I feel musically that doesn't sit with me is probably, well, no, you know what? When I think about it now, it's all killer for me. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I've lived with it for such a long time that I love it so much, possibly. But we end the album on it. This one sends the shivers up my spine when I hear this song, because it's spoken word, which is very brave, until about 4 minutes 10 in, and then it hits a musical turn. But it's basically, and you can guess by the name Clarice. You have to guess. It's the Silence of the Lambs. It's Hannibal Lecter talking to Clarice. It's very clean guitar. It's a very clean sound. There's nothing. It doesn't sound like a Venom song. It's inspired by Silence of the Lambs, the 1991 movie. It's creepy as fuck. I've written on that. It does. It gives me a real heebie-jeebies. Abaddon again fills the sound with this really nice textured drumming. The cymbal work is outstanding. It's ominous. It's seething and leering and nasty. It's a dark track to end the album on. and probably one of the finest of the Tony Doolin era. Even though Primeval was my favourite, this is an absolute corker. And at 4/10s in, it sets off on a real heavy tangent just to take the album out, just to take the light out of the album. It's an 11 out of 11 track. This one's really clever. It's well thought out and brave, because it's not what you would call technically a heavy metal track. It's really progressive in its sound. It's quite proggy, and I love that. I think deep down, all the band love a bit of their prog. I think they all do. And it's I mean, the thing about it though is when you look for the lyric of it, and this is the interesting thing. I couldn't find the true lyric for it, because the lyric that they have on Spotify, which I use to get my lyrics, because my original copy I doesn't have lyrics with it, but I've ordered a new vinyl copy, as I said, and I hope that comes with a lyric sheet. But it's not what's on here. It's pardon me, it's not. Let's have some sip of tea. Hold on. So bear with me. You just got to go and have a listen to it. It's very creepy, and they do make it. It's the sort of thing I put on at Halloween, just to give myself a bit of a. It does. Tony's. I mean, because he's an actor as well. He's been in movies and Master and Commander and things like that. He's a good actor. He's an overall performer, and when he enunciates this, no way Kronos could have done it. He could not have done it. It's beautiful. It's possibly my favorite. As I said, I think that the first track's my favorite, but this comes in a second close to it, because I seem to want to skip to it at the end quite quickly. I often put it play it out of context. So I just love that track. That's the album for me. That is Venom's 8th studio album, and full of contradictions and different musical styles, and an album that's lost because it's the end of the Tony Doolin era, and it's that forgotten album, and I just think that we should forget it. I think it should be up there with Primeval. Really should be. The Wastelands 1992, it's just brilliant. It is available now, limited numbers, from the Venom website, in coloured vinyl. I just ordered a copy. You can get it secondhand on CD and on cassette. And if you can get original copies on vinyl as well, do so. That's much harder to get. Pardon me. But I highly recommend, in either way, or streaming it on whatever your favourite streaming platform is. But sometimes it's just nice to put that physical media on your deck, or on your tape deck, or on your CD player, and just live with it for a little while, not just walk around with it. Anyway, that's enough from me. I hope you really enjoyed this album. I really enjoyed this album. That's Hidden Gem. I'd hope that you go back and have a listen to things, and you might listen again, like I did with completely missing that lyrical content for the connection between Terminator. How I missed it, I'm not quite. Again, I think it's one of those things where you read the lyric and you listen to it, and then I didn't put two and two together until I talked about it on the show, and then it sort of came to me that it's, I mean, is it just because Connor? Am I imagining that? Possibly. I might be. I don't know. Need to Kill, right? That's the one. Who knows? But also might be a science fiction connection that I'm completely missing. Anyone out there who knows more than I do, Tony, if you're listening, contact me and let me know, and I can tell I can tell people next week if I find out. Anyway, that's enough for me. I've rabbited on for an hour. Enjoy the album, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now.